mythology inside the Christian right movement that it was all about abortion, it was all about gay right, resisting abortion and resisting gay rights. But really the precipitating issue that really pulled people like Falwell into the public realm was actually a reaction to civil rights. And the issue for Falwell was Bob Jones University being threatened to lose its federal funding because they had a policy against interracial dating on campus that ran afoul of the Civil Rights Act. And when they became under threat, I mean, that's really what activated Falwell. It wasn't abortion. It wasn't, gay rights. It was that issue that brought him in. And if you listen to like his rhetoric, to stay with him for a moment, he, preached some sermons in the 60s, and he was often would say, the place of the preachers in the pulpit, pastors have no business out in the streets organizing. And, the real target for those kinds of remarks was to discredit the work of Martin Luther King and other African-American activists, pastors who were out organizing for civil rights, right? And that became, quote unquote, political and somehow illegitimate for something for a pastor to do. But once white institutions start getting threatened, he's totally fine, right? To kind of to put that away, and then to talk about the real need for white Christians to organize. But it's around protecting, white institutions, and ultimately behind that, it is again a kind of theology and a ideology of white supremacy.
Well, and if you listen to Frankie Schaeffer's account of those days and the formation of the moral majority, this is the son of Francis Schaeffer, who again in Hamiltonian language was in the room. He says that race really was behind that, as you say, and that abortion became the issue as a result of basically focus groups that Paul Weyrich and others were doing to try to figure out what are the hot button issues we can use to mobilize people. And so it's really interesting that now abortion has become an ultimate litmus test for that movement, when race is the undercurrent of the entire thing, and always has been. So,
well, it's certainly notable. I mean, after Roe v. Wade, the Roe v. Wade decision, the Southern Baptist Convention actually praised the decision in its first meeting after that, right? So it again, you're right. It gets kind of grafted on to the movement after the fact, but it's not something there. I mean, at that point, George H.W. Bush praised the decision. The Southern Baptist Convention praised the decision, and largely it's because white Protestants saw it as a Catholic issue, along with contraception, and didn't really even take it to be, something that's internal to their kind of, or at least their highest political concerns. And again, they had been really activated around race. And just one more point on this is, if you have any doubts about the success of, what came to be called the Southern strategy after the Civil Rights Acts, because what essentially, you can look at the composition of the political parties today. So what, essentially happened was the Democratic Party becomes associated as the party of civil rights. And then you have, in pretty short order, and spurred along by a very intentional political strategy among GOP activists, to foster basically white racial grievances as a way of kind of collecting votes and moving people from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. And by the time we get to Reagan, we really have this, really between, the late 60s and 1979, 1980, you have an almost complete flip in the South, where white Southerners and white Christian Southerners really have moved from being solid Democrats to being solid Republicans. And again, the precipitating issue is the civil rights issue that really causes that shift. And today, this gap has continued to get wider. And today, like I said, in my day job, I'm crunching numbers all the time. I was just talking to a reporter about this the other day, that today the Republican Party is about 70% white and Christian, and the Democratic Party is just about a third white and Christian, right? So the Republican Party is basically twice as white and Christian, and increasingly becoming homogeneous in a way. And it's a direct result of this legacy of a kind of Southern strategy, hemmed on by millions and millions of dollars every 4 years when we have a presidential election, and then with this kind of inertia and initial thrust out of reactions to the civil rights movement.